Hello all, I am Rukshani, a PhD student from University of New South Wales. Today with my supervisors Dr. Gelere Mohammadi and Associate Professor Thomas Badnas, we are presenting our work titled An Exploratory Analysis of Interactive VR-based Framework for Multi-Componential Analysis of Emotion. First, I will introduce to my topic with background information. Then I will be discussing about the problem, methodology, and data analysis and our conclusion. To start, emotions are intimate and multidimensional phenomena affecting our behavior, perception, and cognition. With the computational modeling of emotions, the affective computing was termed as a multidisciplinary research field in the areas of computer science, psychology, and cognitive science. Science has contributed to defining the underlying mechanism of emotions in various theories. However, there is no universal consensus. But discrete models which represent emotions as distinct entities such as happiness and anger, and the dimensional models which demonstrate emotions by valence and arousal dimensions, and the appraisal theory which claim that emotions can be understood based on the appraisal of events based on the individual development, can be considered as the main three models. However, appraisal theories are different than the other theories as they explain beyond the emotional response to understand the emotion generation and their differentiation with each other. This shows the need to think the emotion as an episode rather than a state to emphasize its dynamic nature starting from an event evaluation to emotional episode. Now I will discuss about the identified problem. Discrete and dimensional models of emotions are dominated in this field, but as I mentioned earlier, they do not cover the whole emotional architecture as shown in this figure. Also, neuroscience findings accept that just discrete and dimensional evaluation of emotion is not enough to describe the underlying mechanism of what emotions are, how they evolve, and how they are related with biological changes. Studies in the literature have neglected the full view and focus mainly on the subjective feeling assessment by reducing dimensionality. As shown in this diagram, appraisal theories are accountable for the description of full emotional evaluation from event appraisal to labeling, but those were the ones least focused in this literature. So if we need to understand beyond labeling, we need to consider more descriptive models. Many studies have focused mostly on the basic emotions and expression types, and hence their differentiation is limited to a basic level. Emotion elicitation is the process of mocking an emotional episode in experiments. This can be categorized mainly as passive and active mechanism. Passive elicitation involves the subject as an observer, for an example like watching movies, and in an active scenario, subject is actively participating in games or in virtual reality content. Most of the studies undertake an observer role in evoking emotions. So there is no direct involvement and no subjective feeling assessment. So to solve the problems, we are primarily focused on the component process model. So the component process model is a variant of appraisal theories with main components as appraisal, motivation, physiology, expressions, and feeling, which can be computationally evaluated. Appraisal evaluates an event by several objectives. The first one, relevance, is an evaluation to check whether the incident is relevant to me. In implication, it evaluates the consequences of this incident and its impacts on my goals. Coping potential checks the possibility to overcome the consequences of the event. Normative significance is a check related to the importance. The appraisal has a sequential processing throughout the four appraisal categories, so the effect of one category of checks depends on the outcomes of the previous categories of stimulus evaluation checks. Based on the appraisal results, the motivation define the action tendencies and formulate appropriate responses modifying the previous motivation state. Based on both these outputs, physiological trigger changes in the autonomous nervous system, and expression start transformations in the somatic nervous systems, activating expressive motor behavior. All these components are integrated in central area and constantly fuse and represent the concise experience. Reflection of the ultimate experience can be described as categorical and verbal labeling. So now let's move on to the work using the CPM. First, these full CPM studies have shown the importance of the CPM in emotion differentiation and the role of each component. But none of the studies have induced emotions via active mechanism, collected self-reports and physiological signals, and collected facial signals in one experimental paradigm. Because of that, considering all these main limitations, there is a gap in the domain to understand emotional elicitation by considering a full CPM and active participation with objective measures. In this paper, we first aim to explore the possibility of VR as a medium to trigger varying emotional terms and intensities with multiple components involved, like in real-life experiences. Also, we investigate the underlying dimensions of the emotional space using exploratory analysis, and then we investigate the role of each CPM component in predicting discrete emotions using machine learning. The main contribution of these studies are we are using the full CPM to model emotional experience, and we investigate the interactive VR potentials for emotion-related studies, and we reveal the underlying dimensions of the emotional experience, and we predict the discrete emotion categories from CPM patterns to define the importance of each component in emotion differentiation. So the system design can be drafted as shown in this figure, where we are using VR to induce active emotions and collecting subjective reports and physiological data and facial expressions on wearable devices. When going in detail, each of the participants need to play 28 VR games in 3 sessions. First, we will be having a screening questionnaire to measure the motion sickness level. As shown in this diagram, we will be asking the participants to complete the pre-experimental survey to collect demographic data. Then we will be assessing the personality using BFI and the mood from BMIS and emotions from the Geneva Emotion Wheel and CPM ratings from the concrete items questionnaire. We will be using the MTech Pro device to assess the facial activations and Empatica E4 wristband and shimmer sensors to collect biological signals. And we will record the speech as well. As the ground truth for the emotional experience, we use 20 items from the Geneva Emotion Wheel. Here the left side of the wheel is correspond to the negative emotions, while the right side is correspond to the positive emotions. Participants were asked to mark the experience on a 5-point Likert scale. To assess the emotional experience from a componential perspective, we use 51 concrete items, each belonging to 5 main components. For the listation of emotions, we use VR games because games proven to create active participation, engagement, immersion, create measurable variations in physiology to objectively monitor emotional component. We initially selected a pool of 96 VR games based on the literature usage and ratings from the review sites. After playing each, we then selected 28 VR games. From those, 7 games were from the literature and the rest of the 21 games were selected based on the emotional experience of the research team after playing each game. As shown in this bar chart, first we pre-label each game with the discrete emotion category based on the literature and on our emotional experience and based on the reviews from the game's review sites. Then in each session, we make sure to have a distribution of each type of emotional experiences. Although we mapped each game with the dominant emotion, we did not assume the same subjective experience from the participant. So we use self-reporting as the ground truth for further analysis. So to present the games, to present the question areas, and to time sync each event, and to save the data, we develop an automation application. After wearing all the devices, we calibrate them. Then, game will be presented to the participants for the 3 minutes, and then they will be asked to remove the VR headset and mark the emotional experience. So the same process will iterate for each of the games. We will be using this 3-minute sensor data for further analysis. So the research was approved from the UNSW. In this paper, we present the results analyzed from 4 participants who played 28 VR games. We collected 112 observations, but one observation was invalid, so totally 111 observations were used in the analysis, which has the emotion rating distribution as shown in this diagram. In this paper, we present our analysis using the self-reports, as the primary goal of this paper is to investigate the interactive VR potentials in triggering different emotions and to find emotional dimensions. The figure shows the average intensity scores for the discrete emotions in all games. Despite the negative emotional intensity of some games, interest, amusement, pride, joy, pleasure, and contentment are marked as highly experienced emotion. This can be explained by the high immersion and presence in the VR, which increases interaction and engagement. But sadness, guilt, regret, shame, disgust, contempt, and hate are real experiences, which is not very surprising, as it was difficult to find games that trigger such emotions. So, at least for the selected games and their scenarios, these results show the complex nature of the cognitive evaluation of events based on the individual's 4 appraisal objectives: relevance, implications, coping potential, and normative significance. Also, this confirms that in an emotional event, complex emotional structures and the feelings of mixed emotions can be experienced, which are more difficult to be captured by discrete model of emotion. We notice a difference of these results with the initial categorization of games, which indicate that people manifest different emotions in similar situations. Next, we conducted an exploratory factor analysis to reveal the latent factors underlying the emotional experience. We perform a factor analysis on all cognitive items and applied the varimax rotation. We found 6 significant factors that explain 57.6% of the total variance. By further interpreting these factors based on the learnings, we could find the first factor is corresponding to the experiences and body changes more related to suddenness and novelty, and the second is for valence. So the other factors can be explained as power, action tendency, agency, and arousal. So our results suggest that more than 2 dimensions beyond valence and arousal are required to represent the similarities and differences in emotional experience. The reasons for getting these high dimensions can be explained by our assumption of full CPM with 5 components, where some previous works have used only a few components, emotion terms, or facial expression. So the outcomes are limited to a few dimensions. Therefore, our results show the limited scope of the previous works without full CPM hypothesis. These results show that the dimensional model is insufficient to study and capture the emotional variations optimally. Our results are in parallel with previous works with passive emotional listation, which reveal high dimensions. So next, to analyze the relationship between discrete emotions and their profiles in the CPM space, we use machine learning techniques. We train ML classifiers treating the cognitive items as features and each discrete emotion as the target. We simplify the problem into binary classification by dividing emotion ratings into 2 classes according to Likert scale value tree. We tested the support vector machine model using cross-validation and evaluated the average performance. So the average performance against the chance level is shown in this bar chart. From amusement to the compassion and anger, accuracy is significantly higher than the chance level. The classifiers for the 8 emotions are shown in this slide perform higher than the chance level but are not significant enough. However, classifiers were not performing well for the sadness and regret. The minimal performance of some of the classifiers may be due to the skewness of the emotion ratings to the lower and higher end of the Likert scale as shown in this above bar chart. Therefore, the target class distribution is highly imbalanced due to the limited data, so the classifier cannot find the differences between the two classes. These results show the cognitive items' efficacy in differentiating each discrete emotion's high and low values. To find the role of each CPM component in predicting high and low values of discrete emotions, we trained models only for the emotions that produce significant results using full CPM. Same as previous, we did a similar approach but using relevant combination of cognitive items. The results show that each component is significant to different emotions. The model with all components performs significantly well for all the emotion, and it is highly significant for joy, contentment, relief, and compassion. Therefore, these results show that each component plays a significant role in different emotions, hence no single component might be enough to understand the emotional characteristics. Moreover, in our previous work, which is published in the VRST 2021, we presented our analysis to identify similar structures between emotions collected by Geneva Emotion Wheel questionnaires. In that paper, we performed a cluster analysis on the CPM profile of each discrete emotion. The profile of each discrete emotion was calculated using the weighted average of the normalized cognitive item scores, where the weight of each sample was proportional to the scores of each emotion term. The formula for the CPM profile is shown in this slide. We conducted the vote method-based hierarchical clustering using the Euclidean distance matrix. Looking at the result, it shows that high-level difference between positive and negative emotions, where negative emotions are clustered together in the red upper cluster, which is correspond to the left part of the emotion wheel, and in the green down cluster, positive emotions clusters together, which is corresponding to the right part of the emotion wheel. That readers can refer to our paper, Multi-Componential Analysis of Emotions Using Virtual Reality in VRST 2021. In future, we plan to do a more solid analysis with our proposed setup with more participants and objective measures such as physiological and facial signals. Also, we are planning to increase the stability of the machine learning classifiers by increasing the number of participants on using data augmentation method and ensemble techniques. To conclude, our exploratory analysis indicates the possibility of the virtual reality games for the induction of diverse emotions at several intensities. However, since many games are structures for the entertainment, we found that it is more challenging to find VR games that cause some negative emotions such as sadness, guilt, regret, shame, disgust, contempt, and hate. Next, our dimensional analysis reveals 6 dimensions to optimally study the emotions beyond the basic dimensions valence and arousal. To analyze the relationship between discrete emotions and their profiles in the CPM space, we train machine learning classifiers that shows the correlation of the CPM and discrete emotions. Then our result shows that each component plays a significant role in different emotions. Hence, no single component might be enough to understand emotions. Overall, all these results confirm our hypothesis that full CPM is required to understand the relationship of CPM components and discrete emotions. In future, a more solid analysis can be done with our proposed setup with more participants and objective measures. These are the references we are used in paper, and thank you.